There's a new way to stay connected and know what's happening with Market to Market when you subscribe to Market Insider. One email and a lot of information awaits you. Go to markettomarket.org and subscribe to Market Insider. Agriculture Financial Consultant. Sounds like a big old title, but that's exactly what Kallie Turner does now. She was with USDA and the FSA program. She helped write loans. She helped farmers who came in looking for loans to keep their farm going, but then her job was eliminated as part of the DOGE cuts. And so now she's hung out her own shingle, and she's allowing farmers on places like this one or that one that you see behind me if you're watching us here on YouTube on the M2M podcast. I'm Paul Yeager, by the way. Thanks for joining us. But what Kallie does is help you look at your operation. Where are some areas where you have some outlays that are just too much? Where are some areas where maybe you could put your focus? And what loans are out there for you to continue that path? She's a Missouri native, went to school in the state, works in the state, farms in the state. So that's the conversation we're going to have. We're going to talk about labor challenges, crop insurance, as well as interest rates and loans. That's today's installment of the MTOM podcast. Again, as I said, I'm Paul Yeager. New episodes of this podcast come out each and every Tuesday. We'd love for you to be with us, so hit subscribe, and we'll deliver it in either video or audio form, whichever one you prefer. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen. If you just like to watch, that's fine too. Thank you. Now, let's get to Kallie. Are you a Missouri native?
Yes, I'm a Missouri native through and through.
Where from?
So I'm from Southeast Missouri, Cape Girardeau area, and that's where my family had a farming operation many decades ago. I still had an interest in that, and then I went to SEMO and got an ag degree from their school, and then graduated there, and then I started working for USDA right out of college.
Was the degree in, when you say agriculture, was it more on the ag econ side or something different?
So I actually had an interest in veterinary science, and I figured out that a lot of those like organic chem and the higher level math classes were just not my thing. And so I kind of pivoted to the ag business, still with the animal science concentration. So I still got to take all the classes and everything hands-on with the livestock and everything at the farm. But yeah, I think it was a blessing, actually, instead of me trying to go to vet school and go down the wrong path there. So, but yeah, I definitely...
Not everybody looks good in the long sleeve of plastic on some of the things you have to do in vet school.
That's true, but I am AI certified, so I got that.
Yeah. Oh, you are?
My last year of college. Yeah. So... It's funny because when I used to tell someone I'm AI certified, they would think artificial intelligence. It's like, no, this is AI before the AI we're talking about now. So is funny conversation, especially for people that aren't around it. That's a foreign term. So when you explain what AI certification is, it kind of can throw some people off. So.
Right. Agriculture was doing AI before it was what we now know as it today. So when you make the move to USDA, was that a DC job or was that somewhere based other than Washington?
So it was local at the county office level, and I started in the Boot Hill in the office that's in Dexter. And so that was a lot of row crop operations, like larger farms. You see rice, cotton, soybeans, corn, a little bit of everything there, really. And then I started into the farm loan program, and then I started going around the state as the promotion kind of opened up. I went into a farm loan officer and then a farm loan manager position. And a lot of my time was spent in Southwest Missouri, in the western part of the state. And so I had a lot of cattle operations there. And then I did a little bit with some like poultry integrators and hog farms as well. So seen a little bit of everything.
And when you say working with, what does that exactly mean?
Yeah, so I was doing loans for those type of operations. So I would, either go through their application with them, or maybe it was an existing customer that we had and they needed servicing. Something popped up, then I would help them then. When I was a program technician, that was the entry level job that I had in Dexter. I was doing the farm records and doing acreage reports for those farmers there, and a little bit of the GIS mapping work, which was fun. So enjoyed that part.
The average person that came in for a government loan process, what large, small, medium sized operations, who were you dealing with mostly?
So, just mostly, your family size farms. That's kind of what FSA tries to target, and they try to target beginning farmers, or people that have maybe kind of hit a bump in the road financially. Maybe they've had something at a bank and now they're needing an alternative solution for financing. So, we were seeing farms that were startups, smaller size. I've done farms that have 20 head of cattle, or, I've done somebody that's farming 2,000 acres. So it kind of, varies a lot there. So Missouri's very diverse in terms of the agriculture operations.
And not just from one is pigs, one is hogs, one is cattle. I mean, you're talking. I get what you're saying about the varied size, because we often talk about the neighbor is not necessarily always your equal, because their situation is completely different for both size, financial standpoint, and not. I'm guessing no two loans were the same.
No, there was no, and that's funny because in training we would always say, there's no cookie cutter loan, or, there's not going to be a loan that's going to be the same way. And so, you just have to adapt to that and learn that everybody's going to have, nuances about their operation and their business and their financial situation.
And what year did you start with USDA, if I may add? I'm just trying to set the stage of which administration you were working under.
Yeah, so it was the tail end of 2016, and that was when
Okay.
Obama administration was going out, and then the Trump first term was coming in.
Okay. And then Trump 2 comes through, and you ended up on the DOGE side of things. And what's the initial reaction you had at that moment?
Um, well, I think like we always are aware of when an administration changes, and it doesn't matter what party you are, or where your views are politically. There's always changes that come with an administration. So they want to change some policies, or they have different priorities that they want Farm Service Agency to be looking at. And so I wasn't totally alarmed at the beginning, but then we started getting the emails coming in about, we're not going to guarantee your future employment here. And they started offering the deferred resignation program. There were 2 rounds of that, and there was also a retirement option that you could take if you were eligible for it. So, I thought about it a lot, and then I really didn't decide that I was fully ready until the second round of DRP came around. I just felt like I was kind of in this position where I couldn't really help people anymore. Like I felt like I was limited there. And that last year that I was at FSA, I took a position that was an urban county executive director, and that was in St. Louis. And so it was a pilot program, and I was really building that up from scratch. And so that focus was to get folks acquainted with USDA that are in urban areas, maybe like the small scale farms, community gardens, nonprofits, people that are growing the vegetable side, not the commodity crops. And so, the support I felt like for that program was kind of waning. It has been very quiet. We didn't really have a lot of communication about the pilot program. And so I kind of felt like that may have been something that was at risk. of going to the wayside. And so I didn't want to be part of that when that when it all went down, or if it did. And so, I decided that leaving, I could probably do something that's more effective either on my own or working elsewhere. So.
And as the phrase goes, you made lemonade out of lemons.
Yes. Yeah. So,
or do you not think of it that way yet, Kallie? Oh gosh,
well,
maybe I
yeah,
assumed.
I know. So I felt like there was a gap, in the needs of farmers that weren't really being met. My time at FSA really showed that, you know, it's not a one size fits all solution. So you have people that, will qualify for traditional bank loan. And then you have people that are kind of in between that, and they may still not meet all of FSA's eligibility requirements. So, you kind of got to get creative with being able to finance those people. And, that's kind of what inspired me with doing the consulting business was it's like, hey, I can help people that are trying to navigate, the USDA loan application process. And whether that's a farmer or even a lender, because FSA has a guaranteed loan program, and they work very closely with lenders to get loans closed. And so, there's a lot more, I think, lenders that could be involved in that program and utilize it. But it's very cumbersome and it's hard to navigate. And so I think bankers kind of get, they shy away from that because it's not, it's very time consuming, and then there's all these regulations that they have to follow. And so, that's kind of the gap that I wanted to address starting the consulting was, I think there's an avenue for those people that need help getting in the door or, want the expertise to package a loan and they just don't have time to commit to it.
It is a lot for everybody to undertake, especially, you remember that in your previous spot, and someone who's not familiar with how government loans or just loans of all different types or knowing what's out there, they might just think, I'm just going to a bank for an operating loan. But as you were saying, not everybody qualifies. And back again to something we talked about earlier, no two situations are usually the same.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so then when you decide to do this, so do you call yourself a consultant then? Is that the best way to describe yourself now?
Yes. Yeah. I have a consulting business. So yeah, I'm a consultant. Yes.
And I guess we should just name, what's the name of the business?
Yeah, it's Farm Loan Solutions, LLC. You can find me at farmloansolutions.com, and I have a contact form on there if you'd like to reach out.
And finding clients, how did that go early on?
Yeah, so a lot of it's been like word of mouth. There's some people that I've stayed in touch with, over the years. And so I've just kind of updated them on, hey, what I've been doing. And same way with some of the lenders that I used to work with, I've let them know I'm in the industry. And then, as far as farmers, I have a few that have found me on LinkedIn. Surprising. I never thought that I'd have a farmer reach out on LinkedIn, but it happens. And it's just been kind of building from there. And I take on as much as I can handle at one time because I also work full time for a nonprofit and Missouri Farmers Union.
So you are trying to juggle a bunch of things still.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Every farm person usually has at least 3 jobs. So it's
right. Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
It's diversification and operation and in income and expenses all at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, Kallie, let's talk about, we have a mutual connection that kind of put us together here to have this conversation. And I know his situation is not unique, but there are situations of folks that you're helping. So let's just start with when you see and have an initial conversation with someone, if they would contact you, walk me through what you would do.
Yeah, so I usually start with a phone call. We set something up, and I just really want to get an understanding of what they're trying to accomplish and what their situation currently is. And then, if I decide that that's something that I'm able to do and I have the expertise for, then we kind of move forward. And, so that could look like financial analysis, maybe looking at their cash flow and seeing if we can get them any help there. Also, we'll do loan packaging. So if I see that somebody needs to be refinanced or maybe have some debt restructured to help free up their cash flow, um, that's what I'll focus on that as well.
What's the biggest hurdle right now for folks in cash flow?
This is year over year. We're seeing, our prices go down generally, and then our input costs are increasing. And so that makes it hard on everybody. It's tight. If you're trying to get into the cattle market right now or buy replacements, it's not a great time because it's kind of inaccessible, but it's great if you've got a lot of calves to sell or you have cold cows to sell. But yeah, it's just like I think the entry point for farming is so. I mean, it's basically out of touch. It's out of reach for most people unless you've got a family member that is or a connection to somebody with land that is fairly reasonable on rent, or you've got somebody's line of equipment that you may be inheriting or getting for a better price. But it's yeah, it's scary when you think about, because it's like, how are we going to bring that next generation of farmers in when we can't even sustain the farms that we have, now, and those kind of operations.
So barriers exist like they always have. It's always been land acquisition or availability to have some land, equipment. Then it's inputs for the crop itself, if that's even the direction that you want to go. So that hasn't changed. It's just that the numbers are pretty eye-popping right now. And
Right.
you mentioned it's hard for anybody to get involved, but if someone does think that is what they're going to do and they're going to navigate and they're going to put that albatross of a whole lot of debt underneath them, what's step two then?
Yeah. So, I think like you really have to know your own strengths and weaknesses in your business, right? Like like I know some people that will say, okay, I don't like paperwork, or I don't keep records or any of that. So that's fine, but you got to have somebody on your team that does that, and maybe you focus on more the day-to-day farming aspects. And the other thing is talk to a lender that is all about agriculture. Talk to other farmers and see who is where's an ag friendly bank, and who are the lenders that are responsive when you need something. I think that's a big part of the equation, because as a farmer you're going to need access to capital, and you may not borrow every year depending on what your operation is, but at some point you're going to need that relationship with a lender, and so that's huge. Very, very important. And the other thing is just trying to budget and watch your expenses. I mean, that's easier said than done. And you can't control the cost of fertilizer, and some of the inputs. But if you can control, some of the other costs, then, try to do that. But I think a big part of the struggle is we have folks from last crop year that were in a pretty bad position at the end of the year. And now they're starting this year and they're even that much further behind. So I'm actually kind of worried about about this fall, and when some of those notes come due. So it's going to be interesting. But
Knowing the cost of production is one thing, but having a traditional, when you talk about a commodity, everybody does corn and beans. How do I stand out? How do I make that profitable? Are there operations that have a path forward that's maybe different than it was a few years ago?
um, yeah, I mean, I think like we've seen some of that. Like the beef industry would be an example. Like you see more people that are doing the custom butcher cuts, and they're selling cuts instead of just sending the cow or, the calf to the sale barn when it reaches a certain weight. So those are like value added products that you can utilize to get, a better price for your products. I think there's also a lot of opportunity with vegetables. If you are, if you're someone that grows vegetables, that the demand for that's only going to increase. And, I think we should be supporting that because, why would we want to import a tomato from Mexico when I could get it here locally or regionally grown, for a majority of the year, because we've got high tunnels and things like that can help us extend the growing season. So
I'm not saying you have to put an official USDA hat back on, but think of it from are there lenders that are willing to write loans for those non-traditional, maybe more experimental types of loans and operations than what a traditional, we'll just say corn, beans, and cattle operator has been?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lenders willing to do that. Obviously you've got to have a bank that's a little more open-minded, and willing to finance that. But, a way that you could prepare yourself for that if you're trying to get a loan, try to verify, have an income projection that is as verifiable as possible. And so what I mean by that is, a lender is going to want to see, okay, what kind of market price can they get for whatever they're growing or producing? So we can pull those prices for corn and soybeans and look at the auction results and see what cattle have been bringing. But the produce side of things is a little harder, to determine, because some people will sell wholesale or retail, or maybe they sell it, themselves, like their own retail shop. And so, yeah, I think like if you can get a commitment from a customer, that you're working with, like maybe you get a contract with a grocery store, or, you have a restaurant or somebody that wants to buy everything that you're going to grow, have a plan of where you're going to go with it. Don't grow something unless you have a place to put it.
So the blind faith days are gone?
Yeah, very much so. I think, I mean, when you look at the economy overall, I mean, people are feeling it. It's not just farming, and, banks are going to be they're going to be risk averse, in that kind of environment. So, but, I do think if you are an ag lender and someone that is invested in the community, that you do have a responsibility to help lift those businesses up and support them.
We have one of the surveys that we follow is from Creighton University and Dr. Ernie Goss. And one of the things he does is have conversations with bankers and ask them each month how they're feeling. What's been your conversation with bankers and how willing they are to be writing loans right now? Are they on a cautious or, I won't say scrutinize. I mean, they always scrutinize everything, but are they as free-flowing as maybe they once were?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's been a little bit of reduction in loan making activity, across the board, but we're probably seeing, real estate and land purchases slow down, just because of the prices and the rate environment that we're in right now too. And so, I still think lenders are making loans, but maybe not as aggressive as we once were. So, with the work that I do consulting, sometimes I kind of see, some of the worst cases or, situations that aren't necessarily, online with or on par with the bank. And so I wouldn't want to just say that as a representation of the whole ag lending industry. But yeah, farmers are feeling it, whether you have a multi-million-dollar gross revenue operation or you're, bringing in $10,000 a year. It's tough.
The margins are tight for anybody, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Labor is a huge component of that. It's hard to find anybody that wants to work on a farm, or I guess anybody that wants to work in general. I don't know, but it is, it's tough work when you're working on a farm and it's minimum wage. So I get it. I understand why we have the labor shortage there. But there's a lot of people that or folks that I know that have had trouble with their H-2A visa workers, being able to enter the country this year. And so there's some people that are behind like several weeks and they're like, we're not going to be able to make this up. We've just basically lost that time. So, because they were probably counting on crops to grow in that kind of cold window as we transition into summer. And so, some of that's just been a loss. And yeah, so labor is a huge, huge problem.
Because if you can't get the crop in the ground in the spring, there's nothing to harvest in the summer or fall.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's, I'm not going to say you're not naming names here, but I mean, situations that are, that you feel like you have helped and navigate to basically live to play another day, live to farm another year, or get another loan. What's been the greatest success story for you so far, Kallie?
Yeah. So, I guess I'll keep it generic. I won't name names. But I had a client that is a cattle operator and, had some existing loans with one bank, and bank wasn't necessarily ag friendly. But they had most of his loans there, and he was banking with them too. And, he got in a position where he was just getting squeezed with his cash flow and couldn't pay the bills, and the payments were just kind of eating him alive. And so, he came to me and said, "Hey, like, I don't know, what we're going to do. We're thinking about putting the farm up for sale because, we think getting out's the only solution." And I said, "Well, let's look at your financials and see, what's going on paper." And so, I sat down and looked at it and looked at his tax returns and looked at his current cash flow. And then I started looking at, well, what would happen if we kind of restructured some of this debt? And, that was a great solution because it basically consolidated everything. And then he was able to just have the one payment instead of multiple payments, and I think that some of those were high interest loans. And so when we consolidated those, it saved him money on the interest, and also spread those payments back out to give him some breathing room. So, I think that one was one where, he managed the farm well, but it's been, the economy and all these things that are going against your business, and it's hard to survive that. So that's probably one of my most proud stories is being able to keep him going. And, we got him set on a path where now he's got breathing room in his cash flow and he can focus on, more of the farming aspect and not have to necessarily worry about those payments. And, they're not going to sell the farm either. So that's a huge success. So I kept somebody on the farm, I guess you could say.
Yeah. At what point is it too late to call you, and how early should someone call you?
You can call me at any point. Even if you're just thinking about wanting to start a farm, I am happy to look at financials and see if there's budgets or things out there that can help us project a cash flow and just see how that looks on paper. If you're someone, that's behind and you feel like you're about to file bankruptcy, you can still give me a call and I'll be glad to, look at your financials. And if it's something that's beyond my scope, I'm going to let you know that, right out the gate. And I'll say, "Hey, I think we need to go to somebody else," or "This is, you need to consult an attorney," or, "This is an accountant question," or, et cetera. So.
What is I won't say willingness, because we already kind of talked about that, but the emotional side to bring in assistance? I guess that's kind of a willingness to call somebody for help, because let's face it, we know how farmers can be proud on some things and they get emotional about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you got to have an open mindset. If you want your business to be successful and you want to continue farming and potentially pass that on. You've got to have the people on your team that are going to help you get there. And it's pretty lonely if you're trying to do it all by yourself. So call in those experts. Don't be scared. Go to your FSA office, file the acreage report. Do those things. Meet with your banker to get a sense of where you're at financially, and take their advice if they're giving you any financial advice there.
Let's get close to the end here on a couple of things, because I've looked at what it is that you have done here in the past, and I just think that how different is it going to be in 5 years? I mean, what's the crystal ball like for you? Because there's always ebbs and flows. And if we're at a low now, do you anticipate a high? And if there is, how do you consult someone and walk them through to get to that 1 to 5 year plan right now, as they're looking at it might be pretty bleak right now?
Yeah, I think we have to look at how can we diversify your income? Are there things that we can add in? Are there products that your farm can add, maybe that you're not doing now? Also consider value-added products. That's where, I see a lot of the vegetable people they are pivoting to that because they can get a premium, for that product. And, as far as row crop and cattle operations, it's kind of hard to say things are going to be, great, but I think some of that's going to depend on what are we going to see out of the next farm bill, if it ever passes, and what kind of programs are going to be there for commodity farmers and for farmers in general. I know some folks that have had grant funding that has been pulled in the last year, and now they're scrambling to try to keep their operation going. And so I think if there's a big takeaway from what we've learned in the last year, is you can't put all your eggs in one basket, especially and I would say that with loans or grants. Try to diversify that as much as you can, so you have those relationships and the resources with people. And we've learned the grant funding can be taken away at any time, for any reason. And I really feel for those operations, because it's hard. How do you plan for your only funding source to be gone? And insurance is a huge challenge for those, because I don't know of anybody that insures the smaller operations or the more diversified operations like that. So if you or any of your listeners or viewers know any insurance options for small scale farms, I would love to know about it.
So insurance is a hurdle.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can get it for commodity crops, depending on where you're at. In some counties, it's not even offered on certain crops. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a safety net that those producers also deserve, and I think we should be supporting, because they're growing food that feeds people. Not just items that we're trading with other countries or making fuel out of. So,
well, insurance is even troublesome for homeowners in some spots. Not, and that's been a fairly steady line item for the big insurance companies, is getting a check from a homeowner. And if that's a struggle, I can only imagine what the riskiness that farming causes and the angst that causes the large insurance companies. As I look to my right at one of the large insurance company capital cities in the world, in Des Moines. There's no question in there. Sorry, Kallie. There's no question. It's just more of a comment about the state of insurance, and that's just always something that we're always worried about. And that again is something that causes indigestion for everyone, farmers included, because you want that safety net. So, because you are in a very risky occupation right now, not just physical but financial.
And I think what's going to be interesting is to see how the crop insurance people start dealing with the climate change, because we're seeing floods, drought, on a more consistent basis. I mean, in some years we're seeing both of those, or multiple natural disaster events, and so I worry about those kind of companies. Are they going to start dropping coverage because of that, or if you're, so
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like there's going to be no shortage of work here for you, Kallie.
yeah,
There's lots
nope,
of us are going to need some help.
yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time and your insight, and thank you for sharing your story and
Yeah.
the work that you have done. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
We are produced at Iowa PBS. Our production supervisor is Sean Ingracia. His crew is Reed Denker, Kevin Rivers, Julie Knudsen, Neil Kyer, and David Feingold. The executive producer of Market to Market is David Miller. I'm Paul Yeager. We'll see you next time.